Okay, so hey there YouTube. So it's Descent here, and so if you guys haven't seen my previous video, I did a previous video about when you first open up Cinema 4D, and I kind of went over some of the basic stuff, so if you haven't seen that, then be sure to check out my channel, and it'll be, you can just find that on my channel. So today what I'm going to be talking about is some of the more, again, more basic stuff that you guys can do to set up a scene, but I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth into it, and just talking about how to set up just a very basic scene here. There's a couple elements you have to go over, so you have to think about the background, the floor, whatever you're going to be doing. Like, there's lots of different things to think about and changes per scene. But let's just say, for example, that you're starting off and you have just a basic object, and let's say you want to make it a more dynamic object. But let's first say that actually you wanted to make it so that it was perfectly inside this X, Y, Z, so that it was this corner was perfectly touching this origin. What you do is just click the buttons to move it up first, and then hold Shift at the same time, and it'll move it up in 10-degree increments. And because I know this cube is 200 centimeters, I know that half of it was under the grid, so 100 centimeters up will be exactly on the axis. Same with going 100 centimeters right, and same with going 100 centimeters forward. Or if you wanted to do that another way, there's also, you can type it in the bottom here. So if I go Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, I could also just type 100 for the X, 100 for the Y, and 100 for the Z. And there you go. And this is also how you change the size, and you can also change the rotation here as well. So now we have a cube. Let's say that we wanted to make some changes to it. So I'm going to do just something here. I'm not really going to explain what I'm doing. I'm just going to kind of tell you exactly what I'm pressing on the keyboard. So I'm going to press C to do what's called make me editable, which means that I'm going to be able to now change whatever I want in this cube, as opposed to before where I could change all of these segments and I could change the coordinates and all this other stuff. And I could add what's called a fillet if I wanted to. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit C on the keyboard or click this button over here to make it editable. And now I can actually change the individual aspects of the cubes. What I mean by that is over here on this side, there's going to be selection tools. So there's vertices selection, which means you can select the individual vertices of the cube here, and you can do whatever you want with those. So if I want to select this one and just start, moving it over here, then I could. There's also line selection, so you can select the lines of something and then move those all you want. Or there's also the face selection, which means you can select any faces of a polygon. And if you want to select multiple of any of these at one time, all you do is you just hold Shift and click, and then you'd be able to, Control and then click, and then you'd be able to highlight multiple ones of them. So now we have our cube here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go like this, and we're going to select these top four. Actually, we're just going to select all of them, and so an easy way of doing that is hitting Control A, and that will select all of the lines. And I'm just going to right click, and it'll give you a whole bunch of options for different things you can do. All of these do different things, so you can kind of play around with what all of them do. But for me, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to click Bevel here, and I'm going to turn up what's called the subdivisions, and I'll explain what those are in one moment. And let's do 4 subdivisions. And so now we have this cube, and now it has some nice rounded corners here, as you can see. These are just nicely rounded over. And so what these subdivisions do is actually, if I just go back into my line view and click on my object again, what you can see has been done is that there's been a whole bunch of lines added in here, and so the subdivisions are actually just how many of these lines are added to each corner. So there's 4, as you can see here. And so the more subdivisions, the smoother it'll be. And yeah. So now we have a nice little rounded cube here. Let's say that we wanted it to be on a floor, and let's say we just didn't. There's a couple ways to do that. You could add a plane, and then just make it like super big. So you could add just like another thousands or whatever. But as you can see, it ends here. So let's say you wanted a floor that goes on forever. Well, inside of Cinema 4D, along with the object creation, there's also a couple of scene objects you can add. So one of these is, if you just click, it'll add a floor, or you can click and hold like I said in the previous video, and you can add a whole bunch of different things. So for now we'll just start with the floor. So the floor, you can actually choose, it's basically just, although it looks like it's covering just here now, if I Control R to render, turn that off. If I Control R to render this out now, you can see the floor goes on forever now. So let's say I wanted to add a material to the floor. I went over how to create materials in the last video, so if you don't know how to do that, then just go check out that video. So let's just say you want to add a material to the floor. Now the floor is a different color. There you go. So now we're just going to create a material for this cube as well really quickly, just while we're here. And so materials, there's many different ways you can edit materials, and there's a whole bunch of videos on how these things can be used, and there's just infinite possibilities for what you can do with adding different materials. But what we're going to do today, just a very simple one, is we're going to go into reflectance, hit add, and then I'm going to do a GGX in this instance. And so this is just a type of reflection that they have for Cinema 4D that's built in to the newer versions. On the older versions, you might have to just go into reflection, and then there should be just a basic reflection. If you hit the checkmark tab, there should be just a basic reflection on there, and there also might be a tab called specular for you, depending on how old your version is. This just basically combines those into one, so there's a specular, and then this is our reflection. And this works on a layering system, very similar to Photoshop if you ever used that before, or any of Adobe's products. You can multiply across, and you can do a whole bunch of different things based on each layer. But so what we're just going to do is we're just going to add this reflection here, and I'm just going to scroll down and then come on to what's called Fresnel. And Fresnel makes it so that it's not in so if I put this material just on right now and then hit render, what this is going to be a perfectly reflected material. And I know that's kind of hard to tell, but let's just add another cube here, and let's just move this cube like right here. If I render this out now, it's actually reflecting the cube right here. I know it's kind of hard to tell, give me a second. But it is reflecting the cube right here. So yeah, so what the Fresnel will do is the Fresnel will make it so that it's not perfectly reflective, but instead it will just add like a general sort of reflectance to the material itself. Now if you guys don't know what these words mean, rule of thumb, just go dielectric. If you're not dealing with a straight mirror, just do dielectric. That's just the basic requirement. All of this stuff you can change the incidence of reflection, or refraction rather, and there's just a whole bunch of other things you can do in here. But we're just going to do that for now, and then we're going to go over to the color tab, and we're just going to make this, let's make this like an orangey color, because why not? So I'm just going to delete this other cube. And so now if I render this out, it's just a nice orange color on a floor. But now if I look at this head on and I render this out, once it goes past the horizon, now that disappears. So another option I can do is I can also add in a sky. Now the sky works very much the same way. You can just add in another color, so let's just make this like a blue color. Drops into the sky, and now the sky is blue. So now when I render this out, the sky will be a nice bright blue. Another option is, although this looks like it's actually lighting the scene, right now there's actually no light in the scene. So another option you can do if you want to add something more dynamic is that in later versions of Cinema 4D you also have what's called a physical sky. So if I right click and hold again and go into here, there's going to be a physical sky. And so the physical sky is a really powerful tool. It just creates a very basic sky with just the sun built in. So if I hit Control R now to render this out, now we have like a nice looking lighting setup, and we also will have a sky. So there you go. There's also ways to change this as well. So if you go load sky presets, there's just a whole whack ton of different presets in here. This is just the very most basic way of lighting a really simple scene. So let's say I want to see what this one looks like. So I just hit Control R again on the keyboard, and this one's going to take a bit longer because this is a bit more complex of a light. And there we go. There's also, yeah, do this one I guess as well. This one might be a bit easier. I also apologize, my computer might be a bit slow because I'm also recording at the same time. And yeah, there you are. That's a very simple, very basic scene, and that's just how you set it up. Now, lighting itself, there's many different tutorials on different types of lighting. Lighting gets very complicated. But another aspect to go along with lighting as well is the different angles that you can use to kind of manipulate how you want the scene to look. So along with lighting, there's also going to be different camera angles and different cameras. So we're just going to talk about those really quickly. So to add in a basic camera, so right now you're just looking at it head on. So any changes that you make to this, any changes that you make to your view, they aren't going to be saved dynamically. Like if you hit Control Z, it's not going to move you back to the position that you were originally. It's just going to change what happens in the scene. So let's say you have like a really nice angle, but you want to see your model from a different side. What can you do? Well, what you can do here is you can just click this, and you can just add a camera, and it will make a camera based on whatever view you're in right now. And let's say you move around, you go like under the thing, you go around here, but you want to go back to that view. What you do now is you look at the camera, and there's going to be this little black box. You just click on that black box, and now you're back inside this camera. And if you want to go back outside the camera, click on that, and it'll take you back to your original view. So that's just kind of how you can change views. So if you wanted to have like a camera here, and you want to have one like here, and you want to move between them, now you're on the first camera, and then the second camera, and then now the third camera, and then you can have a different view outside the viewport. And also if you're inside the camera and you move around, so let's say you forget to click outside the camera and you move around inside the camera, it will also change the camera's perspective, and then when you click off, now you're in your own perspective. If you go back to the camera, it's been changed now. Okay, so I guess that's kind of the basics of it. That's just kind of how you set up a scene. So if you have something a bit more complicated than that, it's still the very basic principles. You're going to want to have possibly something on the ground. Maybe you just want to have just a sky with no floor. Whatever you want to do is kind of up to you. But that's going to be kind of the fastest way just to set up a really basic scene. Just add a floor, add a sky, and then you'll just have some basic lighting and stuff that you can start from. So hopefully this tutorial was useful. If it was, then be sure to give it a like. Check out the videos I'm going to be doing in the future, and hopefully I will catch you guys next one. Alright, see ya.